Hi, I'm Stacy.
And I am Mark, and this is the Gurus and Game Changers podcast. Hey, welcome Gurus, welcome Game Changers, and welcome back to another live episode of this podcast. We are once again teaming with Market.live. All the guys are in studio here to bring this to you live from Mainline Studios. Here we are, Wednesday night, 5 o'clock. Super excited to be here. And super excited to bring you today's guest. Today's guest is Niyc Pidgeon. Now, Niyc is a positive psychologist and business coach. Actually, she's not just a positive psychologist. She was named the most outstanding positive psychologist in all of the United Kingdom. Think about that for a second. She won the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. She was named a legendary entrepreneur from Forbes, and her book was named a psychology book of the year. We're going to talk all about her book in a second. And on top of all of that, she has a company called Unstoppable Success. And her methodologies, her training, her messaging has helped over 10,000, mostly women-owned businesses achieve just that, unstoppable success. So look, you want a guru? We have a guru for you. You want to change your game? You want to read her book. You want to read her book. It's called Now Is Your Chance, a 30-Day Guide to Living Your Life, Living Your Happiest Life. The key word being happiest. We're going to talk all about that. So look, if you're watching us live, throw us questions for the guests, get engaged in a conversation. We are happy to do so. So, Niyc, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is great. So look, before we start, positive psychology. I don't know that everybody who's watching knows what that is, and that's going to be the grounding of what we talk about. Can you just sort of just lay out for the audience, what is it and what is its intention and how it's meant to help people?
Absolutely. So positive psychology was founded in the year 2000, so it's still pretty new. And it was discovered and created as a counterbalance to psychology as usual, which was focused more on disorder and disease and looked at what goes wrong with people rather than looking at what goes right with people. So Martin Seligman, he was chair of the American Psychological Association at the time. He decided that he was going to create this science based on a conversation that he had with his daughter. Now, I just love this story because he was in the garden doing the gardening, and she'd said to him, "Daddy, if I can stop complaining, then you can stop being such a grouch." So he had this moment where he thought, right? And he then decided that he was going to create the science of human virtue and look at what goes right with people, organizations, and businesses, and what we can actually do that's grounded in science so that we can actually thrive.
When did your book publish? Like, when did you bring it to the public? Is that recent?
Yeah, so the book came out in 2017, but since then it's gained more and more momentum. So I think that what I learned about writing a book is that writing it and releasing it is just the very start of it. Now we have people every single day that are messaging and they just say, "Niyc, I've been able to change my life because I've put this tool into practice." So it feels very, very fulfilling.
That's awesome. And now is your chance. Are you trying to say like, now's your chance to finally be happy? Because happiness has a specific definition in positive psychology. Maybe you can kind of tell us the difference between like maybe happiness and joy, and not being happy.
I think this term gets thrown around so much, doesn't it? About all I want is to be happy. And I think the premise of the book is really for people to understand and know that it doesn't have to be something that's out there in the future. So you can feel joyful emotion in a moment. You can connect with meaning and purpose in a moment. You can experience fulfillment in a moment. And I actually got asked on, I think it was on a podcast interview or an interview for a magazine. And the journalist had asked me, "Niyc, you've got this book that teaches you can be happy in a month, but do you actually believe that?"
Yeah.
And I said to her,
second question.
I know. And I don't just know that you can be happy in a month. I know that you can shift the way that you feel in an instant. Mm-hmm. So the premise of the book is that actually we have power in the now to change the way that we feel. And the more we remember that, the easier it's going to be to access happiness rather than put it out there somewhere in the future.
And is that the power of gratitude though? I feel like in the moment, if you're going to shift in the moment to becoming happy, the best way to do that is just accept that you're very grateful for what you have.
100%. And that's why I put that chapter up front, because it's really such a beautiful way to walk through life, to remember everything that we already have and everything that we already are. It's really easy when you've got a lot of problems, or there's a lot of challenge and change and transition in the world, as there is right now. It's really easy to get caught up in that loop of negative thinking. But gratitude is a frequency. It's like turning a radio to a radio station, and tuning into gratitude can completely shift the way that you perceive and experience life.
Wow. You talked about a gratitude rampage in your book. What is that?
Do you know what? I love this. And it's even better when you do it with someone else. So maybe you guys can do it together after the show.
I love working with you, Mark.
I'm grateful for you as well.
Yes.
Is that it? Was that the whole rampage?
You can do it as a written exercise. So you can have a journal and brain dump all of the things that you are grateful for, and just go one after the other, after the other, after the other. And what the new research says in gratitude is that it's even stronger when it's shared. Oh. So if you guys get into a text conversation, or you speak with a friend or a family member, we do it within our team in the business. And we just say go, and one person shares one thing, and then you fire off another thing, and you go in a big list, and it gives you this energy and excitement. And I remember one time I was walking around Miami when I was on a trip there, and I ended up being grateful for gratitude itself, because I felt so good at the end of the
day.
That's funny.
I love the story when you jump in the car with your brother, and he's like, "Oh, is this going to be happening now? Is this going to be a thing? The whole gratitude."
Yeah, he's like, happening? Are you going to drop a G-bomb again, Nick?
A G-bomb. I love it. Hey, we have people tuning in. Cassie says she loves the show. Hey, Cassie. She's excited to hear about the book. And Marie says, love this.
She's loving this.
Love you, Marie.
That's awesome. Hey, so one of my questions that I have for you was, a lot of people want to do work on themselves, right? They can't be happy because they're not happy with who they are, right? Let's put it that. When you talk about like minding the gap, if you will, like shine some light on that gap from who you are to who you want to be. What should they be looking for? Why are they shining a light on the gap?
I think one of the things that I've really learned is we are creators, and we get to decide who it is we want to be, and we get to step into the next most powerful version of ourselves. And I think that along the way, it's really easy to put a vision of yourself outside in the future. But one of the things that I've known and learned is that small, positive, daily steps in the right direction compound to create big results. So when we talk about that gap between who you are now and who you want to be, I always say, how can you show up as if you are that version of the person right now? And yeah, it's like, could you, like, even if you look at a role model, for example, so you look at someone that you admire, and you look at what it is specifically that you admire about that person, and then you ask yourself, would I like to become more like this person, or would I like to embody more of that characteristic? And how might I do that right now? Yeah. So not in 10 years, I'm going to be like that person. But you know what? What if I started showing up with a little bit more courage, or a little bit more compassion? How might I be able to actually become that person more quickly because of taking the positive step right now?
But sometimes in closing that gap, I tell my son this, I have a 14-year-old son, so I'm constantly trying to put positive mindset and mentality in him, right? And I tell him, like, all right, there's your gap. You want to be this kind of soccer player. You are this kind of soccer player. What's the one step? Just pick one step to get yourself, and in essence, you're saying one step closer closes the gap. But that's change, right? That's maybe massive change.
Yeah. And it's so scary for people too. Yeah. So
I think when you look at some of the statistics where you see, to become a peak performer, you've got to do 10,000 hours of a particular activity. And if we just took that in isolation, nobody would ever start. But it's understanding that journey of 1,000 miles really does start with a single step. And then you'll look back and you'll be able to see how far you've really come.
And it's also not focusing on what your strengths are. You're focusing on the lack. You're focusing on what you're not. But what I've found, and I'm probably guilty of this. I'm going to admit something on the show.
Why you gotta focus on what you're not good at?
Well, downplaying your strengths. You talk about how people sometimes downplay their strengths. And I often see people, and this is a personal thing, I often see people who amplify their strengths as coming across as arrogant or cocky. So I have a tendency to downplay my strengths. But why is that necessarily bad?
It's interesting. And I feel like a lot of it is to do with how we were brought up. And in school, I know certainly I was told you have to be good at everything.
Yeah.
And let's look at the things that you're not very good at and make those better so you can be good at everything. Whereas actually the positive psychology science teaches that if we just focused on what we were good at, we would reach our goals more quickly. We would have more fun along the way. And then we can actually work together with each other to complement and combine our strengths together. So I think there's a distinction between showing off, and certainly coming from England, there was a certain degree of modesty that we were encouraged to have.
Sure.
So I remember when I first started my online business, I was embarrassed and I was scared, and I thought, what is everyone going to think about me or say about me? But what I've learned is that it's practice. And when you notice that focusing on your strengths can actually make you feel good, why wouldn't you want to do more of that? Why wouldn't you want to be able to build better relationships? Why wouldn't you want to access states of flow so that everything feels more enjoyable and easier?
Yeah, and focusing on your strengths doesn't mean you're out there saying, I'm good at this and I'm good at that. It's more, right, you're envisioning where you're going to be, right? So I had positive psychology person that I worked with. She wanted a partner. So she literally envisioned that she already had that partner. So every night at dinner, she would set a place for him. She would put candles on the table. Like she envisioned that. And that's, what actually ended up happening.
I love that.
Like just that envisioning.
So that's like
crazy.
Manifesting.
She manifested whole thing. And she was 85.
Oh my God. She manifested that at 85?
Yeah, that's a heck of a story. Crazy.
What a cool story.
Do you feel like you have a calling? Like, is this a calling for you? So you and I talked about this ahead of time. The story of how it hit you, that positive psychology was a thing and was your thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I know that I can't not do this work. And it's the thing that gets me out of bed every single day. So it's a real devotion. It really is a devotion. And I love it every single day. I'm so grateful. And the way that I came to positive psychology was when I was 17 or 18. So I'm talking 20 years ago now. And I was actually signed up to do a mechanical and automotive engineering degree that I'd got scholarships to go and study at university. And before I went to do that, I actually took some time with my friend who was a professional cricket player at the time. And he'd said, do you want to come over to Australia with me while it's the English off season so we can do some warm weather training? I said, yeah, I'll come with you. So he'd gone and he was doing his training for his cricket, and he was also seeing a sports psychologist. Now, I'd never had any experience of psychology. I'd never studied it at school. So he was coming home and he was telling me all of these experiences that he was having. And I remember he told me this conversation that he'd had with the psychologist. And he said, Nick, I was laying on this bed. And it's such a visual, isn't it, of a psychology room with the bed and the couch. I was laying there and the psychologist was telling me, imagine that you're on the cricket field and you've got the bat in your hand and you're looking around you and you're looking out onto the field and you can see all of the fielders. I don't want you to actually look at the fielders. I want you to look at the gaps in between them instead. Now, as a teenager, that for me was the biggest light bulb moment, because it made me think, what if we as humans looked for the opportunities instead of the obstacles? And what if we focused on what's going right rather than what's going wrong? And that doesn't just have to apply to sport. So I came back from Australia. I cancelled my engineering degrees. I went through to study psychology with sport, and I didn't even know positive psychology at that time. It was just a step in the right direction. So I went to study psychology with sport, and then ended up seeing a invitation for an event that was happening as an after-school class on a notice board that was the positive psychology class 2 years later. But if I hadn't have taken that first step in the right direction, I may never have found positive psychology at all.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
To go from engineering to psychology, like but you know what? And maybe it's not so different, because it's sort of like figuring things out, right? So in a way, maybe a little less technical, but not. I mean, neurology is, yeah. So you always, you seem so optimistic and positive, obviously. But there were times, it's a good thing for what you're doing in your career.
Right.
But that's not how you always were, right? I mean, when you were a child, I think you said when you were 11 in some of the interviews I've watched that you actually were bullied, which I can't imagine how they could bully you looking at you now. Like, where could they find,
It's fascinating, isn't it, when you look back and you see the defining moments on your path. And I didn't realize it until a lot later that was one for me. So when I was 11 or 12, I was getting bullied really badly at school. And where it used to happen was actually in PE, because I wasn't sporty. I was really academic. And in the structured classroom environment, the bullies couldn't get to me. But as soon as it was unstructured, that's where everything started to kick off. So one Tuesday morning, I didn't want to go to school and nothing was changing. I wasn't getting a solution and I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. So I actually raided my mum's medicine cabinet and I had a suicide attempt at that early age. Now, looking back, that doesn't even seem like me. It seems like another lifetime. But what that meant was that I was taken out of school and I couldn't get into another school for 6 months. So I was homeschooled. And then my dad made a decision. And I think looking back, you can see, or you can ask yourself, what was it or who was it? So what were the defining moments, but who were the people in your life that had a domino effect? Because dad ended up deciding to remortgage our home so that he could afford to pay for me to go to a different school. Now, he said it was the best and the worst decision that he'd ever made, because he said that I'd gone to this school and I was like scrambling because I was at the bottom of the pile and everybody else that had money in our family didn't have money. But he said, Nick, you made the best of that opportunity. And he said on New Year's Eve, so every year on New Year's Eve in America now, where I live, I watch the English and the UK fireworks, and it's usually around 3-4 p.m. in the afternoon here. So I was watching New Year happen in the UK, and I was texting my dad, and I said, Happy New Year, Dad. And he said, Nick, you are the best investment I ever made.
Nice. Oh my God.
And I was in tears, crying.
Well, you said that when he remortgaged the house, it showed you the power of belief, that his belief in you showed you the power of what belief can accomplish.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be something as big as that. It could be a kind word that someone says. Like I had my friend's mum, my friend Steph and her mum, Angie, she was really influential. She was the first woman entrepreneur that I ever came across in Newcastle. And she said to me once, she said, Nicola, you are brilliant and you're always going to be successful. Now, that was one comment and it stayed with me for the last years.
Powerful comment.
People can make a difference.
Yeah.
They really, really can. But then, so did you then, in your nature, even though you had that issues when you were 11, did you look at it in a positive way? Like, were you already using sort of positive psychology, philosophies at that age without even realizing it?
Not when I was that young.
Right.
And one of the things that is important to remember is that in our brain, we actually have a negativity bias. So it's easier for us to default to not feeling good or to thinking the negative thought. And we need 3 or more positives to outweigh the negative. So one of the reasons that I believe that I'm so good at what I do is because I actually didn't have a strong mindset. And I notice that if I'm not practicing positive psychology actively, that I start to kind of slip back a bit. And I think it's not a bad thing, because it reminds me of the power of the tools and that they really do work. So what I want for people to understand is that you don't have to naturally feel 100% happy and positive all of the time. That is impossible. But what positive psychology does give us is a way to make a change in a moment in a simple way that is proven to work.
Did you notice that once you started employing these positive psychology skills, that things that happened to you later in life, you were able to sort of look at differently?
I think it definitely makes the challenges easier to navigate, because one of the things that happens with positive emotions is they have a broadening and a building effect. So when we talk about building levels of resilience, one of the ways that you can do that is to have more fun and laugh more, experience more positive emotions. And it's almost like it builds a sense of strength within you, so that the next time something hard comes up, you're able to get through it more easily.
Right.
So you can see that it's all supportive on the path. And whether you want to feel good now, soon, or later, positive psychology can help you do that.
And I love how the book does that too. So as you take people through the book, and there's like exercises.
Yeah.
So you talk about gratitude first, and then there's gratitude exercises. And then you talk about, I think it's clearing, making sure that everything is like the Marie Kondo of your house, like making sure that everything's clean. Yeah. What are the other steps? So it's gratitude, it's letting go, I think.
Yeah, so in the book, there's actually more than 60 different tools that you can walk through every day for 30 days. And I broke it down into your body, your mind, and your spirit as the 3 sections or the 3 steps, so that you can start to really get grounded and get your physical self and your physical environment, your nutrition, your movement, those real tangibles. You can get them in place first. And that gives us almost like a foundation on which to build the next level of mindset work. So then we're moving more into the manifestation that you talked about, or the strengths. There's a really powerful practice in there about forgiveness. That it might not be the one that's the most exciting,
right,
but it creates a big shift.
Yeah, and I did love, you talked about writing letters to people in gratitude. And I really love that, because I think we say thank you or whatever, but I think a written letter, whether or not you're even going to send it to the person, if you write something down about how grateful you are, like, and just think about it and like saturate it in, like all of a sudden, like other things kind of fall away. You know, that's like, I think to me, gratitude's the number one.
I agree.
But you know, you do it every day.
Yeah. 100%. Set your mind in the right place. You know, so you mentioned when you first started, you were saying, well, what are people going to think of me? You know, should I be doing this when you're first starting your online business? So self-doubt. I just want to talk about that for a minute, because every one of us knows somebody who's riddled with, if it's not the person themselves, riddled with self-doubt. Especially when you're comparing, you look at social media, I should be that, or this person's making 7 figures and I'm not. And so what's wrong with me? I can't do it. I'm not capable. I have doubt in my own ability. How do you move from that? I think the phrase you used, which I love, is you move from that to kick-ass confidence. Which I love. Like, that's where I want to be all the time, right? What, not necessarily what are the steps, but what would you tell somebody right now who's just riddled with that self-doubt to help push them?
I think one of the first things is reminding yourself to be your own biggest cheerleader. I think that in your day-to-day life, you've got a relationship with yourself. Like, you're the person that's having the conversation inside of your mind and inside of your heart all of the time. So we want to be kind and compassionate in that conversation. I also think it's important to understand and know that you can actually shift the way that you think and you feel. And I talk about this idea of the word abracadabra, and the thoughts that you think and the words that you speak are actually creating your reality. So if we're speaking to ourselves in a negative way, it's going to put us on the downward spiral when it comes to confidence. But in the opposite way, when we affirm and we repeat a positive, it can actually help us to feel better more of the time. Another thing that I love about confidence is that you don't have to be confident in all areas all of the time. There's something that happens called a transfer of confidence, which means if you want to feel more powerful in your business, for example, you could go and work out at the gym, start to create a result, feel that sense of accomplishment, tell yourself that you've done a good job, and that confidence effect will actually transfer into all of the other areas of your life.
Yeah. I think self-talk and self-hypnosis is so powerful. I never say anything negative about myself to myself. Even if I may feel it, I'm not going to allow those thoughts in my head because other people will handle that for me in the world, right? So you need to be, to your point, you need to be your own cheerleader. So wait, before we talk about,
I don't want to have this.
oh, you want to, go ahead, no,
Go ahead, you go ahead.
I just wanted, I wanted to talk about affirmation, just real quick, because I think I'm not going to go off on a long diatribe, but I think everybody does it wrong. And I want to hear what you have to say.
Because so controversial on this episode.
Damn it, people. No, so listen, it's sort of like when you stand in front of a mirror and you're dressed up, like your shoulders are back, your stomach's tucked in, and then you turn and leave the mirror, and that you left that person in the mirror. You go back to normal. You don't look as good as you did, right?
What?
I think people do that with affirmations. They'll be like, remember Stuart Smiley from Saturday Night Live? I'm smart enough. I'm good enough. People like me. And then they go. They leave their affirmations at home because they don't take the next step. To me, the next step is you have to have, there's a directive. There's an accountability to make that happen. So if I say like my family is loving and supportive, say that's my affirmation. Okay, but then the onus is on me to be loving and supportive back and to approach them with love and support to make sure they're going to be the best that they can be today, which means I get up and walk across the room when my wife gets home to give her a hug and kiss. I don't react out of frustration and anger with my son. So it's an all-day directive that is driven by the affirmation. But I feel like people are like, oh, I say that, and then my wife's mad at me and my kids are yelling at me because they're not doing the work necessary to make that thing. I think that's what drives manifestation, not just these, I'm going to have a parking spot when I get there. That's magical thinking. That's, I think, just a waste of time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
go ahead, Nick.
What are your thoughts?
I think there's so much in this. So first of all, we know from positive psychology that there's a ripple effect that happens when somebody is working with positive psychology or they're receiving positive psychology coaching. So we see that it's not just the person that's working with the tools that has a positive shift, but their family is positively impacted, also their friends, and actually every single person that person meets. So if you're working with positive psychology or receiving positive psychology coaching, you impact 135 other people.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah. So there's that
sick stat.
Holy cow.
It's a good stat, right? And then the other thing that I really know about manifestation. So first of all, you're not in charge of how other people behave. You can't go and control them or force them to do anything or be anything. Even if you're having the best time working with positive psychology, you felt a transformation. You can't, and actually it's sometimes hardest to tell the people that are closest to you to go and do it. So you've got to know that you are the only person that you can control. So by you doing the work, you're already doing enough. And I would just love to also invite and remember that it's not just about your mind. So positive psychology isn't just about thinking. It's not just about the neck up. It's also about the body too. So when practicing affirmations, I really love to anchor something in, both with your psychology, but also your physiology. So I always talk about, like, could you move your body in some way and you're anchoring it into emotion, or you're taking your affirmations out on a walk or a run with you. So then it's actually moving through your body and it's assimilating and you're embodying it so much more.
I'm shifting gears a little bit.
Shift.
Sorry, I love talking about this, but I saw that you made Elon Musk cry, and I was hoping that you would tell the story of how that happened.
I love it. I love the shifting gears analogy as well when he's got Tesla Motors. So good. Okay, amazing. Yeah, so I was invited to do a Google Hangout with Elon Musk and Sir Richard Branson 10 years ago now. 10 years ago. So I was given a list of questions by the production team, and it was through Virgin. So it was as a result of having had investment from Virgin Starter for one of my first businesses. And I said, Nick, do you want to come and do this interview? And I said, yeah, of course, amazing. So I was in Newcastle in the UK. So Richard Branson was on Necker Island. Elon was here in Los Angeles, and the Virgin Unite team were in South Africa. And this list of questions that the production team had prepared were terrible. So I took it into my own hands, and I thought at the last minute, I'm going to change the question. So I asked Elon, and I said, Elon, what is the hardest thing that you've ever had to do in business emotionally? And I thought he was just going to give some flippant answer. But what happened next was the production team were behind the cameras, and I could see them, but I was looking down a lens. So I couldn't see what he was doing, but they were all shocked, and they were going, Nick, oh my goodness. And they were pointing to the camera. And I thought, what on earth is going on here? And when I watched it back, he'd actually teared up as he was sharing the story about when he had got all of the money from the sale of PayPal, and he had to make a decision of whether to invest into Tesla or whether to invest into SpaceX. And he said he felt like both of those businesses were his children, and he didn't want either one of his babies to starve. So what he decided to do was go all in and put all of the money that he had into these businesses. So he left himself with nothing, to the point that he had to sleep on a friend's couch. Wow. But it paid off. So I think what I learned from that is that you have to take big risks, and you can bet on yourself and trust yourself. When you know that you want and are committed to making something work, then you've got to trust yourself in that. And then secondly, it doesn't matter whether you are just starting out in business, whether you don't have a business at all, or whether you're a billionaire, everybody gets scared. So business is an emotional journey, and we get to navigate it with that in mind.
That begs the question to be asked of you. What's the most difficult thing you had to do in business?
Oh, I don't think it's a big thing. I think it's a little thing. I think it's in those moments where nobody is watching. Nobody knows the challenges that go on behind the scenes. Nobody knows that you're feeling tired, or that, I went through mold poisoning. What? And I was running a business, and I have a personal brand and a social media profile. And I think it's in those moments where you are committed to showing up, and you show up again and again and again. And you've got to tell yourself, like I always say, the only way that you can fail is if you quit. So I think it's that subtle decision in a day to keep going and don't quit. And I think that is the hardest thing, because it would be really easy just to give up when no one's watching. Yeah. People are there to celebrate the results, but it's actually what it takes along the way in terms of your discipline and determination that really counts.
How did you do mold poisoning and still, what?
It's actually something that is supposed to be very, very common that people don't realize is out there. I lived in a house when I first moved to Los Angeles for 3 months with a group of entrepreneurs, and there was black mold in that house. And the only way that I found out was that I had been so sick for so many years, to the point where I was exhausted. I had all of these different symptoms, and we were trying to find out what it was. It took me years. It took me brain scans, tests, finally figured it out. And I posted onto Facebook, and I said, I've just found out I've got mold poisoning. One of the guys that used to live in the house with us said, I know where you've got that from, Nick. And this was 2015. So I was finding out probably 6 years down the line that I'd been suffering with this for so long. So what it taught me was that you have to be a fierce stand for your own health. Because if I hadn't have kept being in the inquiry of what it was that was wrong, and I knew I didn't feel normal, I would have just been resigned to feeling like that for the rest of my life. But I know that you can feel better than ever before when you know that there's a solution for the way that you're feeling. So don't give up when it comes to your health.
I don't want to belabor it, but was it a blood test or was it a, allergy test? Like, how did they figure that out?
I mean, I had blood tests every 3 months. And what was happening was we were solving one problem. So we were solving adrenal fatigue. And then I wasn't feeling better. And then we were solving heavy metals poisoning. And I still wasn't feeling better. And then we were solving hormonal imbalances. But it was because we were solving the symptoms and not the cause.
Wow.
So once we found that it wasn't working, the doctor essentially, after I'd had the brain scans, they said there's only one thing that this could be because you should be feeling better by now. So then they actually did a urine test for the mold, and it was a $200 test. By this point in time, I'd spent over $100,000 and 2 years trying to figure out what was wrong. And it was a $200 simple mold test. So now I've recorded some episodes of the podcast and people ask me, I'm feeling like this. Do you think it could be mold? And I say, just go and get this test. So there's a urine test, and then you can test for an inflammation factor in your blood called IGF beta 1. So it was those two things combined, and I had 6 different types of mold in my body.
God, I hope we're helping somebody right now
I know,
who doesn't know what's wrong with them. Yeah.
Because you can't see it, so you never know it's there.
Whew.
You're just dealing with it.
They knocked the house down. They probably had to remediate the heck out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, one other question that I have here, then you can ask some more. But this one just caught me, like I was listening to your book. I never got the answer to this. I hadn't gotten there yet. But so you said that cutting your eye with a contact lens created an opportunity for you to see. What did you mean by that?
So you know when you say, like, as a positive psychologist that teaches happiness, have I ever had any challenges? I feel like I've got all of them. So this was when I was in London and I took my contact lenses out. I was staying in a hotel and I cut my eye open, and it was really, really sore. So I'd gone to see the doctor at the hospital, and they said that you've got an ulcer on your eye and you need to put these drops in every 30 minutes to heal it. So I was having to do these drops every 30 minutes, even through the night. And I was going away on a vacation to Mexico. I went on my vacation. I was really, really good, really committed to the protocol, setting these alarms for every 30 minutes, being really healthy. And then I got back home to the UK after a week in Mexico, and I had a voicemail on my phone, and it said, "Hello, Nicola, it's Professor Figueroa from the Royal Victoria Infirmary in Newcastle. I'm really sorry, but I'm afraid we made a terrible mistake. And you don't actually have an ulcer on your eye. You've got a flesh-eating bug in your eye, and it can make you go blind within a week." He said, "I need you to come into the hospital immediately."
This is a twist.
Well, yeah.
This is a twist.
Crazy.
Oh my God, what happened?
So I had a different type of medication that I had to take in terms of the drops in my eye. And it took 10 months to get that little thing gone. It was a tiny little amoeba. But what was happening was it curled up into a ball. So when you put the medicine in, it kind of hid. So now everything's fine. I have a little scar on my eye, but it's all completely gone. But it was just another example of, it was helping me to see how I'd been living and what I'd been doing, and that health was really important. So I feel like it opened me up to a new level of awareness, as all challenges do. So one of the things in positive psychology is looking for the silver linings. So I could complain about that experience for the rest of my life, or I could say, you know what? Here's what it taught me. Here's what I learned in the process. And in that understanding of the silver lining, it helps us to find so much peace and so much gratitude, which shifts our well-being into the positive.
Did you, just as a follow-up, did it have to die, or did you have to have it flushed out? Like, what had to happen for it?
It had to die.
It had to die.
die.
And it was a collection, or just one amoeba bug.
One little guy in there.
Oh my God.
Did you want to save
10
him?
months.
Like, he's got to die. Like, he's
That's
eating
incredible.
her eye. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
no, I
you
don't want
weren't
to save him.
gonna
I was thinking
him.
maybe he flushes out or he gets weak enough that he disappears. So I can I ask you?
Yes, go.
So I have to ask this because I live this every day. In the book, Now's Your Chance. That's the book. Please get it. It's fascinating
So good.
and
So
very
easy
powerful.
too. And you can listen to it too. I love it
Exactly.
with her beautiful voice.
You talk about the importance of having a powerful morning routine.
That's
Go.
your gig.
That's totally me. Go. Tell me why.
Go.
What's the value?
I love it. I mean, we've got an opportunity every morning to start our day in a way that allows us to feel good. And in the morning, we've got more willpower. It's been studied. We've got more willpower than we have later on in the day. So if you can shift the way that you think and you feel, it's going to open you up to experience things in a much better way. So it means your brain's switched on, ready for the intake of information. It means you can step more into alignment. And I've got 2 schools of thought on morning rituals now. So I think if you've never had a morning ritual, it's really important to commit to a specific structure. And the one that I teach in the book, I think it's got 7 steps. It doesn't even have to be 7 steps. It could be 3. So I teach a morning ritual that is thank, connect, and move. So it's gratitude, meditation, and movement. And if you just committed to doing 10 minutes, so 3 minutes for each of those things, that would completely transform your life just by doing those 3 things at the start of your day.
I hear you 100%.
What are the other 4 things?
Nutrition, there's visioning, there's connecting in and speaking out your vision for the future. I actually now have 44 things on my morning ritual list. Now, when I say I've got 2 schools of thought, here's what they are. So the first one is the structured morning ritual that I really needed when I was getting started. Now I know I'm going to do something every morning to make myself feel good. So the structure has actually been replaced by a menu. So I now have a list in my phone in the notes, which is a checklist. And it's 4 good things. And I go through and I'm like, what do I feel like doing from this list this morning?
And what are some things on that list that you haven't talked about yet? What are some of the menu options?
So saunas, ice bath.
Ice bath.
I've got my infrared mat, even really small things like going and having my electrolytes.
Okay.
Going outside in the sunshine.
Sunlight, right.
Playing music really loud. I'm a fan of 80s disco.
And you dance
That's
every day,
my
right?
thing.
I've heard you dance every day.
Yes. Yeah, and shamanic shaking, like shaking out your whole entire body so that you can move energy through it. And it's looking at what those small gateway activities are that you can do, because sometimes if you've got a 7-step ritual that's going to take you 45 minutes, it can be easy to say, well, I don't have time for that today. But if you just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to start with the easiest thing that I know is guaranteed to make me feel good. And that thing is gratitude, or that thing is listening to Abraham Hicks on YouTube, or that thing is moving my body. That's your gateway. So then you can do step 2. So rather than thinking about it as this whole long thing, what is the easiest thing to get you started? And I would put that at the start of your ritual.
So much better because I get bored of routine. So knowing that I can like switch up step number 1 with like 2 other things, like that's probably more appealing to me.
I'm going to try this menu idea. I kind of like the menu idea.
Yeah.
I'm very rigid in my morning routine, but
you're rigid in a lot of things.
It removes the ability to be flexible and add stuff because I have assigned times to everything, right, to make the morning the most productive it can be. So that menu idea is fascinating to me. I might have to try that.
And you have children too, right? So for those people who are listening who are like, I can't do this routine. I've got kids. They might be sick. They might be, what do you do with your children? You have twins, right?
So it might be that instead of doing a 30-minute morning ritual every morning at 5 a.m., you actually manage to grasp 5 minutes for yourself to do a meditation, or you actually integrate your kids into it, where you're doing a dance party with your kids, or you go and take the kids to school, and then you come back and you do your ritual for yourself.
Come back and do your dance party.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta fit the dance party in there. I'm going to ask you another question. There's a study, it's all over TikTok. I've seen so many videos about it, how they just measured, they were trying to figure out what was a determinant of success. It was a long range study, kids into grown-ups, and it wasn't education, it wasn't smarts, and it wasn't experience. And it's sort of like an Angel Duckworth thing. It was grit. They determined that that was really the be all end all lever that they could pull to ensure that they're hitting their goals, achieving success, whatever. You talk about it as a means of building resilience. How important is that to the overall, gratitude, all the other things? How important is grit to positive mindset and growth?
I mean, it's there. It's a fact. We all have it. We get to build on it and develop it. And it's not that one area of strength within us is any more important than us all. It's really looking at how can we build a robust sense of self. I think of it almost like scaffolding. I don't know why I get that visual. It's like scaffolding inside of ourselves so that we're able to feel supported and strong. And I think that grittiness is the willingness to just stay in it, be in it, and keep on moving no matter what. I think it comes through understanding that it's not always going to be easy, and understanding as well that you can weather the storm. So I think that grit is very, very important, and you get to combine it with some of the elements that perhaps feel lighter. So when it comes to that, the broaden and build theory, for example, knowing that your grittiness and your resilience is going to be boosted by you working with gratitude. So it's not that it's one or the other, it's actually how can you integrate and understand and practice knowing the value of both. Wow. Have you read the book as well, Angela Duckworth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great book, right?
Phenomenal.
Great book. I have one final question.
Wait, but I have questions.
I know. I have one final question.
I'm just kidding. No,
Maybe I don't.
Mark's interview is almost done.
Maybe I have to. Yeah, I'm going to leave. You guys just lock up.
You sit right here.
I like that scaffolding imagery, by the way.
It's really good.
What would you say to somebody who just says, "Hey, Nick, I just don't want to get out of bed tomorrow"?
Oh, that's a great question.
What's your ace in the hole for that person?
For me, it was meditation. So when I've been in that dark place, and I've been there a couple more times in my life, it's really been looking for the simplest thing that you can reach for that gives you comfort or gives you some relief. And I think it's connecting in with, number one, a sense of hope. Because we see that when you lose hope, that's when everything starts to fall apart. So it's like knowing that there's going to be a brighter day, knowing that this too shall pass, reaching out to someone that can support you, and just finding that one person that, while maybe you're not being a powerful cheerleader for yourself, they can be the cheerleader for you. So I talk about the hope as the first place to start. Secondly, it's about being devoted to your practice and being devoted to yourself. So continuing to take those steps, no matter how small. If the step is literally, I'm going to put on a meditation on YouTube, that was where I was. And I just thought, right, I'm going to do this, and it's 17 minutes or something, or it's 5 minutes, and I'm just going to listen. And I started to notice day by day, I started to feel better. And then connecting with yourself, with your loved ones, and also with something that's bigger than you as well. So whether that means a higher power or purpose, for me, it's the mission. You asked me about why I do what I do and what positive psychology is for me. It's like, I can't not do this. I have to do this. I'm on this path. It's what connects me in with that fire and motivation inside of myself. So it's maybe looking for what that is for you that keeps you going, whether it's the connection with source, divine, God, or whether it's a connection with what you're truly here for. Whatever feels accessible for you right now.
I love that.
Yeah,
We're winding down, but so what is next for Nick? What's next? I know you're writing another book.
I've got another 2 books. So first book was Positive Psychology for Happiness. Second book is Positive Psychology for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. And then the one after that is going to be Positive Psychology for Success and Business. So the books feel like the most important way that I can have an impact on the planet, because whilst I have courses and training programs, not everybody knows about those or wants to do it, but everyone knows what a book is. Everyone can pick up a book or put on their headphones and listen to it. So that's what I feel really excited about.
Well, I know I loved Now Is Your Chance, and I think everybody should read it. And it's just fabulous. It really, really is.
Love it. Now's your chance, a 30-day guide to living your happiest life. And really, that does encompass it all. If you're just happy, everything else kind of falls away. But it's maintaining that happiness in this world that we're dealing with, in the daily struggles. And, you know, we're very blessed. We don't have the struggles that most people have, right? So just that alone, just that learning alone can get you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. And can people reach you on your website, or how, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
So nickpidgeon.com, and I love hanging out on Instagram. That's probably my favorite place. I love a voice note, so you're going to get the dodgy Geordie accent. The Instagram is Niyc Pidge, but I'm on all of the platforms as well.
This has just been so amazing.
It's been great.
Really
great. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been phenomenal.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being such amazing examples of positive psychology as well. I just love that you practicing it every day as well. So thank you.
I love it. And thank you to everybody watching us on Market
Thank you.
Live. And thank you to all the gurus and game changers. Have a great night.
See you next week.